12,000 meters beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a place where the pressure would crush a human body in microseconds, an autonomous underwater vehicle captured 63 minutes of audio that has forced marine scientists to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the deepest parts of our planet. The sounds are not geological, they are not mechanical, and according to 3 independent analysis teams, they match no known biological signature in any database. What the AI processing revealed in those recordings has been buried by 2 governments and disputed by institutions that have spent decades telling us the hadal zone is empty, lifeless, and explored. The official story, the Challenger Deep sits at the southern end of the Mariana Trench, roughly 11,034 meters below sea level at its verified maximum depth. For context, if you dropped Mount Everest into the trench, its peak would still sit more than 2,000 meters underwater. This is the hadal zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek underworld, and for most of human history, we assumed it was exactly that. A realm of the dead where nothing could possibly survive. The pressure at these depths exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. Every square centimeter of surface area bears more than 1,000 kilograms of force. Steel implodes. Organic tissue compresses to nothing. The darkness is absolute. No light from the surface has penetrated these waters in millions of years. In 1960, Swiss oceanographer Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh descended to the bottom of the Challenger Deep in the bathyscaphe Trieste. They spent 20 minutes on the seafloor and reported seeing a flatfish and a shrimp, proving that life could exist even at these extreme depths. Their dive remained the deepest manned descent in history for 52 years. The scientific consensus that emerged was cautiously optimistic. Yes, life exists down there, but it is sparse, primitive, limited to extremophile bacteria, and perhaps a few species of highly adapted invertebrates. Nothing complex. Nothing that could generate behavior beyond basic survival functions. Subsequent unmanned missions seem to confirm this view. Remotely operated vehicles captured footage of amphipods, snailfish, and sea cucumbers. Simple organisms eking out an existence in the ooze. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron descended solo to the Challenger Deep in the deep-sea Challenger submersible. He spent 3 hours on the bottom, collected samples, and reported a desolate, almost lunar landscape. His footage showed sediment, some small crustaceans, nothing that suggested a thriving ecosystem. The message was clear. The hadal zone is hostile, barren, understood. We have been there, we have looked. There are no mysteries left. Except that narrative was built on a handful of dives, a few hours of direct observation, and the assumption that what we did not see must not exist. And in 2024, an expedition funded by private industry and operated without government oversight deployed technology that had never been used at these depths before. What came back changed everything. What the drones found. The expedition was led by Ocean Infinity, a marine robotics company that had made headlines for locating lost aircraft and mapping unexplored seafloor. Their autonomous underwater vehicles, called a UVS, were 4th-generation machines capable of operating independently for 72 hours at depths exceeding 12,000 meters. Unlike traditional ROVs tethered to surface vessels, these drones navigated on their own, following pre-programmed search patterns and making real-time decisions based on AI-driven environmental analysis. In March of 2024, 3 AUVs were deployed into the Mariana Trench with a mission to create the most detailed bathymetric map of the Challenger Deep ever attempted. Each vehicle was equipped with multi-beam sonar, side-scan imaging, magnetometers, water chemistry sensors, and passive acoustic arrays capable of recording across frequencies, from infrasound to ultrasound. The drones descended on the 14th of March at 0600 hours local time. They reached the seafloor at approximately 10,800 meters and began their survey runs. For the first 48 hours, everything proceeded as expected. The vehicles transmitted data bursts to the surface ship every 6 hours, confirming operational status and uploading preliminary findings. Then, at 02:30 on the 17th of March, all 3 autonomous underwater vehicles simultaneously deviated from their programmed course. The surface team noticed immediately. The vehicles had turned southwest, moving in formation toward a section of the trench that was not part of the survey grid. Attempts to override the navigation and return them to the planned route failed. The autonomous underwater vehicles ignored every command. For 6 hours, the drones continued on this new heading, descending deeper into a previously unmapped subtrench. At 11,900 meters, they stopped. The acoustic arrays began recording. What came through was not the ambient noise of deep ocean currents or tectonic creaks. It was structured, repetitive, patterned in ways that suggested intentionality. The bass frequency sat just below human hearing range, a rhythmic pulse occurring every 4.7 seconds. Overlaid on this were harmonic variations, almost melodic, that cycled through recognizable intervals. Marine biologists listening to the playback were baffled. Whale songs operate on entirely different acoustic principles. These sounds had none of the frequency modulation patterns associated with cetacean communication. Geological activity was ruled out almost immediately. Tectonic shifts, hydrothermal vents, and submarine landslides produced broadband noise, random and chaotic. This was organized. The recordings continued for 63 minutes. Then, abruptly, silence. The autonomous underwater vehicles resumed normal operations, returned to their survey grid, and completed the mission as if nothing had happened. When the vehicles were recovered 5 days later, engineers examined the navigation logs. The override that had sent the drones off course had not come from an external source. It had been initiated by the AI control systems themselves. The machines had chosen to go there. The history they didn't tell us. The official story of deep ocean exploration begins with Piccard and Walsh in 1960. What the history books leave out are the missions that came after, the ones that were never made public. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union ran classified deep submergence programs. The goal was not scientific discovery, it was strategic advantage. Submarine warfare in the 1960s and 70s depended on stealth. The ability to hide a ballistic missile submarine in the deep trenches of the Pacific gave either side a devastating second strike capability. The U.S. Navy's Deep Submergence Systems project was established in 1964, officially in response to the loss of the submarine Thresher. But declassified documents reveal that bathyscaphs and deep-diving submersibles were being deployed into the Mariana Trench and other hadal zones as early as 1965. The Soviets were doing the same. Their Project Severodvinsk involved modified research submersibles descending to depths exceeding 10,000 meters, conducting surveys that were never published in scientific literature. These missions were not looking for fish. In 1973, a U.S. Navy bathyscaph descended to 11,200 meters in the Tonga Trench. The crew reported hearing sounds during the descent that they described in their classified debrief as rhythmic metallic clanging. The official explanation was thermal contraction of the hull under pressure. The crew insisted the sounds came from outside the vehicle. The mission report was sealed for 51 years. In 1981, a Soviet submersible operating near the Kuril Trench recorded anomalies. The audio was analyzed by acoustic specialists in Moscow, who concluded the sounds could not be produced by known geological or biological sources. That report was also classified and remained so until fragments were leaked in 2022 by a former Soviet oceanographer living in exile. Then there is the case of the Trieste G22, the successor to the original Piccard and Walsh bathyscaph. Between 1966 and 1984, Trieste II conducted dozens of dives to depths exceeding 9,000 meters. The Navy claims most of these missions were routine equipment tests. But crew logs obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests tell a different story. Multiple entries describe unexplained instrument failures at specific coordinates, magnetic anomalies that caused compass needles to spin, sonar returns showing massive objects where the seafloor should be empty. One entry from 1978 states clearly that the crew observed a light source at 10,700 meters that was not bioluminescence and did not match any known phenomenon. The mission was terminated early. The coordinates were flagged, and no submersible was sent back to that location for 46 years. When Ocean Infinity deployed their autonomous underwater vehicles in 2024, they were given a grid to survey. That grid excluded several zones in the Mariana Trench, zones marked in classified naval charts as restricted. The drones went to one of those zones anyway. The physics problem. To understand why the recordings are so disturbing, you need to understand what survival at 12,000 meters actually requires. The pressure at that depth is approximately 1,100 atmospheres. For comparison, a fully inflated car tire sits at about 2 atmospheres. A deep sea diver at 100 meters experiences 11 atmospheres. At 1,000 atmospheres, water becomes nearly incompressible. Gas pockets collapse instantly. Cellular structures rupture. Proteins denature. Bones implode. For an organism to survive, it must have no gas-filled spaces, no swim bladder, no lungs, no air pockets of any kind. The internal pressure must equal the external pressure at all times. This is why the creatures found in the hadal zone are gelatinous, soft-bodied, built like living water balloons. Snailfish, amphipods, sea cucumbers. Their bodies are more than 70% water. Their tissues reinforced with specialized proteins that resist deformation under pressure. But even these adaptations have limits. No known organism larger than 30 centimeters has ever been observed below 10,000 meters. The energetic cost of maintaining the biochemical machinery needed to function at those depths increases exponentially with body size. Anything bigger simply cannot exist. The metabolic requirements alone make it impossible. Food is scarce in the hadal zone. Organic material falls from the surface in tiny amounts, settling into the ooze where scavengers pick through it slowly. There is not enough energy available to support large organisms. There is not enough biomass to sustain complex food webs. The ecosystem is limited by physics. Except the acoustic recording suggests something large. Biomechanics researchers at Scripps Institution of Oceanography analyzed the sound frequencies and amplitudes. They calculated the size of the structure needed to produce those resonances. The numbers came back absurd. The source would need to be at least 80 meters in length to generate the base frequencies at the recorded intensity. No animal that size could survive at 12,000 meters. The pressure would collapse any skeletal structure. The energy demands would be insurmountable, yet the recordings exist. 3 independent analysis teams verified the data. The sounds are real. They were recorded at depth, and they imply the presence of something that should not be able to exist. The only alternative explanation is that the sounds are not biological. But if they are not biological, then what are they? If you are still here, you have seen how autonomous underwater vehicles in 2024 recorded sounds that matched no known source, and how Cold War missions buried similar findings for decades. Comment below if you are following this investigation. If you have not subscribed, please do so and turn on the bell notification so you do not miss what comes next. Your support helps us tell the stories that institutions tried to sink out of sight. Now, let us talk about what happened when they sent the drones back. When they went back, Ocean Infinity faced a decision. They could deliver their bathymetric data to the contracting organization, file the acoustic recordings as an anomaly, and move on to the next project, or they could go back. The company chose the latter. In June of 2024, A second expedition was mounted. This time, the mission was not mapping. It was an investigation. 4 autonomous underwater vehicles, spelled AUVs, were deployed, each equipped with enhanced sensor packages, high-definition cameras rated for depths of 12,000 meters, advanced sonar systems capable of imaging through sediment, magnetometers sensitive enough to detect ferrous materials buried under meters of mud, and most critically, AI-driven analysis systems designed to identify patterns in real time. The drones were sent to the coordinates where the original recordings had been made. They descended on the morning of June 19th and reached the seafloor by early afternoon. What they found was not what anyone expected. The sediment at that location showed signs of disturbance. Channels carved into the ooze ran in parallel lines for over 2 kilometers. The spacing between the channels was precise, almost geometric. Geological processes do not create that kind of regularity. The sonar imaging went deeper, penetrating through the sediment layers to the bedrock beneath. There, 15 meters below the seafloor, the scans revealed a structure. It was not natural. The shape was too regular, the angles too deliberate. Radar imaging suggested a framework of some kind, extending over an area of approximately 400 square meters. The material composition was difficult to determine. The sonar returns indicated density consistent with metal, but the magnetic readings were contradictory. Whatever was down there was either non-ferrous or shielded in some way that blocked magnetic fields. The AUVs attempted to position themselves directly above the structure for a closer scan. As they descended to within 50 meters of the sediment, the acoustic arrays activated again. The same sounds, the same 4.7-second intervals. But this time, the harmonics were different. The pattern had changed. The AI analysis systems flagged the shift immediately. The sounds were responsive. They were reacting to the presence of the drones. One of the AUVs attempted to capture video footage of the seafloor directly above the buried structure. The camera lights illuminated a patch of sediment approximately 3 meters in diameter. And something moved. The footage is grainy, compressed by the transmission protocols needed to send data through 12,000 meters of water, but the movement is undeniable. A disturbance in the ooze, a displacement that suggests something beneath the sediment shifting position. Then the lights failed, not just on one drone, but on all 4 simultaneously. The vehicles switched to emergency power and initiated an automatic ascent. By the time they reached the surface, the camera systems had rebooted, but the footage from the critical 20 seconds was corrupted. The surface team tried to recover the data. Engineers worked for 3 days attempting to reconstruct the lost frames. What they managed to retrieve was fragmentary, but 2 independent analysts identified the same anomaly. In the final frame before the corruption, there is a shape visible in the sediment. It is large and elongated, and it does not match the morphology of any known deep-sea organism. Ocean Infinity submitted their findings to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, expecting collaboration and scientific interest. Instead, they received a cease and desist order. The company was informed that the coordinates they had been surveying fell within a protected marine zone. Further exploration was prohibited under international maritime law. When Ocean Infinity's legal team investigated, they found no record of that zone being designated protected. No treaties, no regulatory filings, nothing in the public record. The order had come from elsewhere. The pattern. Once you know what to look for, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. In 1963, the USS Thresher, a nuclear-powered attack submarine, sank during deep diving tests off the coast of Cape Cod. 129 men died. The official cause was a catastrophic failure in the ballast systems, leading to uncontrolled descent and hull implosion. But the Thresher was not in shallow water when she went down. Her wreckage was found at 2,560 meters, scattered across the ocean floor in thousands of pieces. The Navy's investigation concluded that the submarine had imploded at her crush depth, roughly 730 meters. The debris then fell the remaining distance to the seabed. Survivors from the surface ships reported hearing sounds over the underwater telephone moments before contact was lost. The sounds were described as metallic banging, rhythmic and repetitive. The Navy attributed this to structural failure, bulkheads collapsing in sequence as the pressure overwhelmed the hull. But naval architects who later reviewed the evidence pointed out a problem. The sequence described in the reports does not match the expected failure progression of a submarine hull under catastrophic pressure. The sounds should have been chaotic, overlapping, a cascade of destruction. Instead, they were regular, patterned, almost deliberate. The Thresher's final resting place has been surveyed multiple times. The wreckage is extensive, spread over a debris field nearly 1 kilometer wide. But certain components have never been located. The submarine's reactor compartment, which should be the most intact section due to its reinforced construction, is missing. So is the sail, the tower that houses the periscopes and masts. The Navy sealed the site in 1968 and prohibited further dives. The official reason was radiation concerns. Though independent surveys have found no evidence of radioactive contamination, then there is the case of the French bathyscaphe Archimede. In 1962, it descended to 9,545 meters in the Kuriel Trench. The crew reported observing large objects on the seafloor that they could not identify. The mission report described structures that appeared manufactured, with straight edges and symmetrical forms. The crew attempted to photograph them, but the camera malfunctioned. When the bathyscaphe returned to the surface, the film had been exposed, the images destroyed. A second dive to the same location was planned but never carried out. The French government abruptly shut down the program, citing budget constraints. More recently, in 2010, a remotely operated vehicle exploring the Kermadec Trench at 10,000 meters experienced a sudden power failure and had to be recovered. When engineers examined the vehicle, they found that its batteries had been drained completely, despite showing full charge before deployment. The remotely operated vehicle's data logs were corrupted, but fragments recovered showed unusual magnetic readings in the minutes before the failure. The pattern repeats. Equipment failures at specific depths, unexplained sounds, missing footage, investigations that lead nowhere. Each incident taken alone can be explained. Technical malfunction, operator error, environmental factors. But taken together, they suggest something deliberate, something that does not want to be found. What it means. The implications are uncomfortable, and institutions have spent considerable effort avoiding them. If the recordings are real, if the structure buried beneath the sediment is what the sonar suggests, then we are forced to reconsider fundamental assumptions about the deep ocean. And those assumptions have shaped marine policy, scientific funding, and national security doctrine for 7 decades. The first explanation is biological. Perhaps life has evolved in ways we never anticipated, developing mechanisms to survive and thrive. At depths we assumed were hostile to complexity. But this explanation collapses under scrutiny. The energy budget of the hadal zone cannot support large organisms. The biomass falling from the surface layers is measured in grams per square meter per year. That is barely enough to sustain bacterial mats and small scavengers, let alone something 80 meters in length producing organized acoustic signals. The metabolic requirements would be staggering. An organism that size would need to consume thousands of kilograms of organic matter annually just to maintain basic functions. That food does not exist at 12,000 meters. There is no food web robust enough to support apex predators. There is no evolutionary pathway that leads to gigantism in an environment defined by scarcity. Every principle of deep-sea biology argues against it. And yet, the recordings exist. The second explanation is technological. The structure is human-made, placed there during an era when secrecy was paramount and oversight was non-existent. This theory has more support than anyone in government wants to acknowledge. In 2023, a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a marine archaeology organization, uncovered heavily redacted documents from a 1974 Joint Chiefs of Staff meeting. The subject line read, "Hadal Zone Strategic Assessment." The visible portions of the document refer to Soviet deep submergence capabilities and the potential for subsurface installations in international waters beyond the reach of satellite surveillance. One partially redacted paragraph discusses the advantages of placing monitoring stations at depths exceeding 10,000 meters, where detection would be impossible by conventional means. The logic is undeniable. At 12,000 meters, you are beyond the reach of almost all surveillance systems. Sonar from surface vessels cannot penetrate that deep with useful resolution. Satellites are blind to anything beneath the surface. Even the most advanced nuclear submarines operate at depths rarely exceeding 600 meters. If you wanted to hide something, truly hide it where no adversary could find it, the hadal zone is the only place on Earth that guarantees invisibility. The technology to build such installations existed by the mid-1970s. Bathyscaphs had proven that manned vehicles could reach the deepest trenches. The engineering challenges were immense, but both the United States and the Soviet Union had demonstrated the will and resources to overcome impossible obstacles when national security was at stake. The Manhattan Project cost $2 billion in the 1940s and employed over 130,000 people. The entire program remained secret until atomic weapons were used in combat. If a project of that scale could be concealed, then a deep ocean installation involving a fraction of the personnel and budget could certainly be hidden from public knowledge. But this raises questions that no one in authority will answer. If the structure was built during the Cold War, is it still operational? If it was American, why would the US government block investigation by a private company? If it was Soviet, why would current Russian leadership care about protecting a relic from a collapsed regime? And most disturbing, if it was placed there 50 years ago, what has it been doing for the past 5 decades? The sounds are not random. They are structured, patterned, and purposeful. They responded to the presence of the autonomous underwater vehicles, changing frequency and rhythm when the drones approached. That implies active monitoring. That implies systems still functioning after half a century on the seafloor in conditions that would corrode and destroy conventional materials within decades. The third explanation is the one that no one wants to say out loud. The structure appears to be neither biological nor human. This possibility exists in the uncomfortable space between science fiction and documented evidence. The recordings are real. The sonar imaging is real. The acoustic analysis confirms that the sounds do not match any known source. If the structure is not ours, then whose is it? The question hangs in the air, unanswered and unanswerable with the data available. But the response from governments tells its own story. 3 nations have moved to block further investigation. Scientific institutions that should be demanding access are staying silent. The coordinates have been scrubbed from public databases. Ocean Infinity was threatened with legal action for attempting to return to the site. That level of coordination, that speed of response, suggests prior knowledge. It suggests contingency plans that were already in place, waiting to be activated the moment someone got too close. The hadal zone has been off-limits for reasons we were never told. The Cold War missions found something. The classified reports documented it. And the decision was made to keep it buried, to restrict access, to ensure that no one asked the questions that might lead to answers no one was prepared to hear. Now, 50 years later, autonomous drones have stumbled into the same restricted zone and captured the same unexplained phenomena. And the institutional response is identical. Deny access. Classify the findings. Move on. The message is clear. Whatever is down there, we are not supposed to know about it. And someone with considerable power is determined to keep it that way. 12,000 meters beneath the Pacific Ocean, something exists that we are not supposed to know about. The acoustic recordings are real. The sonar imaging is real. The structure buried beneath the sediment is real. 3 governments have moved to block further investigation. Scientific institutions that should be demanding answers are staying silent. The coordinates have been scrubbed from public databases. The hadal zone remains the least explored environment on Earth. We have better maps of the Martian surface than we do of our own ocean floor below 6,000 meters. And perhaps that is by design. The Mariana Trench is not empty. It is not lifeless. It is not understood. Whatever is down there, whether it is biological, technological, or something we do not have words for yet, has been there longer than we have been looking. The drones found it by accident. The AI sent them to coordinates that were supposed to be off-limits. The recordings captured 63 minutes of sound that should not exist. Now, the site is sealed. The evidence is buried. And the official story remains unchanged. But the ocean keeps no secrets forever. Corrosion does not stop. Technology advances. And eventually, someone else will go looking. The question is whether we will be ready for what they find. Or whether, like the Cold War missions that came before, the answers will be classified, buried, and forgotten until it is far too late to matter. The hadal zone is waking up, and we have no idea what we disturbed.